Hungry Dads.
Welcome to Hungry Dads, your guided tour through the delicate and often overwhelming balancing act between food indulgences and social acceptance. And now, as always, here are your hosts, Rod Budget and Hugh Gallen.
Hello and welcome to this week's show. I'm Rod Budget.
I'm Hugh Gallen.
The Lay's Do Us a Flavor winner was revealed earlier this afternoon. For our listeners, will remember our very first episode, the premiere episode, we revealed our Do Us a Flavor thoughts and eventually our votes. And today it came out that Wasabi Ginger is the winning flavor for 2014. If you guys will remember, as I said, we already revealed our votes. I reluctantly went with Bacon Cheddar Mac. And Hugh, what did you go with?
I went with cappuccino.
So neither of our flavors as professional podcasting food people won. Wasabi Ginger, and I'll quickly give my thoughts, not that I have many because I just can't reconcile it. I boldly proclaimed in that episode that Bacon Cheddar Mac would be the winner. I'm not one to go out on a limb and make bold predictions like that, but I was kind of callously saying the American public's going to just vote for whatever they think tastes best, and everybody loves bacon and mac and cheese, so it's going to win. And then Wasabi Ginger just kind of caught me by surprise. So my first thought was, America has kind of, done a 360 on us and is going with the most shocking flavor. Like, the people who are doing this are in it for the shock value, and they're just trying to come up with the weirdest flavor, and that's going to win. But then the more I read about it, and I read a bit about it this afternoon, cappuccino is also a shocking flavor, and cappuccino was just absolutely lambasted by not only the general kind of widespread public and press, but by our friendly food bloggers out there who we know and the other podcasts. It seems that no one liked cappuccino, which we did a live taste test of, and Hugh was very, very, very bullish on it, and I enjoyed it. I crunched it quite a bit on the podcast, and it was just absolutely torn apart. And so I found that interesting. At first I thought, people are just being in it for the shock value. Wasabi Ginger is shocking flavor, but then at the same time, cappuccino was completely just ripped apart. So I'm a little bit at a loss, but I don't know. Hugh, do you have any thoughts on the winner and kind of cappuccino getting all this backlash? What's going on there?
I mean, look, I don't want to do sour grapes here because I did not expect cappuccino to win, and I had heard anecdotally kind of the cappuccino backlash, but I didn't expect it to become such the black sheep that it did. And I certainly didn't expect Wasabi Ginger to win. I don't know if I'm completely out of touch. I associate wasabi and ginger flavors with sushi.
As do I. As I think everybody does. I don't think that's being naive. I don't have the answers here. I'm still kind of in a fog. I'd like to think that we were so far off because we are chip experts. So we are the experts. The general American populace is not, so that's why we were so far off base.
Kudos to Wasabi Ginger and their followers. If any of our listeners are devotees of the Wasabi Ginger, give us an email, shoot us a tweet, and let us know why it's worth defending.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what I want to know. Why is it such a unique flavor? Why is it so great? Maybe there are a lot more Wasabi Ginger fans out there than we realized.
The last thing I'll throw out is what might have helped the flavor was the chip style. It was a kettle cooked style chip. It was the only kettle cooked of the group. I don't know if that would make a difference, but kettle cooked is generally a very strong chip.
I'm a big fan of the kettle cooked, so there you go. I mean, it seems like if you're going to have a contest like this, you should have consistency in the chip texture, but like you said, it's their marketing plan. It's their child. It's been wildly successful for them, so no sour grapes here. I'm just a little bit confused.
Hungry Dads!
Okay, so now Hugh has a special segment that is a little bit shrouded in secrecy. He's given me a few hints at what it's about, but honestly, your friend Rod Budget here is a bit in the dark, so I'm quite anxious to hear what he has to say.
Thanks, Rod. So my segment for tonight is Food Confessions, which we've done before. Food Confessions is nothing new. but I decided to put kind of a new spin on it for tonight, and what it's going to be is Food Confessions, the game show.
I wish to confess.
You wish to confess?
Okay, Rod, what we're going to do tonight is I have several food confessions I'm going to give, my personal food confessions that I'm going to give tonight. Each food confession also has associated with it kind of a logic or a justification that I gave for that act that I'm confessing to. And the kind of the trick to this show tonight, the game show, if you will, is going to be that before our show tonight, I've asked our wives, Mrs. Budget and Mrs. Gallon, to rank each one of these based on the strength of my logic and the legitimacy of whatever justification I gave.
Wow.
And
All right.
and I'm going to ask you to tell me, for your wife, which ones you think she would have found generally kind of acceptable or generally unacceptable.
Okay, wow. It's like the Newlywed Game. I like it.
Yeah, it's kind of a matching, kind of a little bit of a Family Feud kind of thing. This is the kind of instruction and criteria that I gave to Mrs. Budget and Mrs. Gallon, just so you have the context from where we're coming from. I said they could use whatever criteria or reasoning they wanted, but I wanted them to consider some particular things. One is that I'm well aware that I shouldn't indulge in junk food as much as I do. I wanted them to know that I really shouldn't be spending money on junk food. It's expensive to live here, and these expenses can add up. I made it clear that I'm a weak-willed person, and that I also happen to be trained professionally in the art of persuasion based on my occupation. So don't be surprised that I can very easily convince myself to indulge. I told them that they can consider the gravity of the confession itself, as well as the legitimacy or lack thereof of whatever justification I set up for myself. So I think if you understand the game, I asked them to rank what I had given them, with the higher number being the most legitimate and the lower number being the least legitimate. I don't want to get into the nuance of the numbers. I think that'll be tough to do here on the podcast. But suffice to say, they gave me some numerical rankings and some comments that I was able to determine whether or not they found this to be an acceptable or an unacceptable action and justification. So I want you to tell me whether or not your wife was generally accepting of my logic or if she thought that I was full of it. And then I'll also tell you what my wife thought, and then I'm always curious to hear what you have to say, Rod. Okay?
Okay, this sounds great. Yeah,
Ready to go?
let's
Do
do it.
you understand the game?
I do.
Okay. So this is the first food confession. Sometimes outside my work, I go to the newsstand and I get a candy bar. I always get a Butterfinger, a Snickers, a Payday, or a Reese's. And I justify this as solid parenting because my daughter is allergic to peanuts, and we don't keep any peanut-based snacks in the house. So it seems actually very responsible to go and get my peanut fix while I'm at work. Now, did Mrs. Budget find this to be acceptable or unacceptable?
Oh, boy. I would say she would lean towards acceptable for that as a family woman.
Yeah, you're about right. I mean, she basically was accepting, but I think a little bit skeptical compared to some of her other answers. She ranked it kind of in the middle, and she said, "Yeah, I guess it makes sense," but it wasn't exactly an overwhelming approval of this logic. My wife, on the other hand, was absolutely not accepting of this logic. She said it was ridiculous, and to not bring our daughter into this.
Wow.
And it's somewhat logical. There's a couple of things at play here, and legitimate from her perspective. Number one is that peanut butter candies are her favorite types of candies. And since we had a daughter with a peanut allergy, those have been removed from the house entirely. Now, currently, she doesn't work. She's at home all day. So she doesn't have access to newsstands, nor does she have nearly as much access to time away from the kids. So the fact that I'm able to exploit my position and justify my decisions like this, the fact that she might resent it a little bit is perfectly understandable.
Absolutely. And also I think that she was correct in calling you out for bringing the daughter into it. You're kind of using her for your own snacking good, which I think is acceptable, but I could see how a spouse might find that unacceptable.
Oh, absolutely. And just to be clear, on these food confessions, I'm referencing it as a justification or as an excuse. I'm not going to sit here and try to actually defend it as logical, but at least I'm revealing the inner workings of my mind and how in that instance when I want to indulge, how maybe I get myself over that hump from maybe I shouldn't to maybe I should. Ready for the next one?
I am ready.
Every day I go on my commute, and I commute via train. I go to Grand Central Terminal, and I get on the Metro North. Many days, I will stop and grab what's called a black and white cookie, or say a cinnamon roll from kind of a bakery that's in my path. And these aren't cheap relative for a snack. They're $2 or $3 each, especially compared to a $1 candy bar. They're not healthy at all, but in my head, I have justified this as a matter of what I call comparative vice. You see, I also walked by a cart that sells beer that you can drink on the train. And I say to myself, Kevin, you've had a hard day. You deserve a beer to relax on the ride home. But beers are $5. A cookie would relax me too. And alcohol's a real vice. So by comparison, a $3 cookie is a very responsible choice. Do you think that Mrs. Budget found this to be acceptable or completely illogical?
Oh, wow, this is a tough one. There's a lot going on in this one. There's a lot of different psychological angles. Mrs. Budget, ironically, is in finance, so she's big into getting a good value. She's also one to enjoy a nice alcoholic beverage after a long day. So I might be reading too much into this, but I think she's going to call BS on this one.
Oh, you blew it. She was generally accepting of this. She specifically said, it's hard to argue with your beer rationale, although that might reflect my own weakness. I happen to know Mrs. Budget likes a beer from time to time. She's not an alcoholic or anything like that. But she did say there was not really a truly defensible logic, but that she generally kind of understood it. She ranked it more towards the acceptable than unacceptable. Again, relative to each other. On the other hand, my wife, this one was close between the two of our wives, but Mrs. Gallon said she's glad that I'm not really prone to alcohol. Pick your vice. She seems kind of okay with the cookie. Certainly more okay than with the peanut candy bars.
She just doesn't want you to come home drunk.
Yeah, understandable. The next one. This one's very simple. Basically, if I've eaten some fruit or vegetable in the last 24 hours, it's open season on what my subsequent food choices are. So, for instance, I'll think to myself, I had fruit for breakfast, so I've earned this bacon fried hot dog or fried cheese sundae, cinnamon pretzel, or whatever it is, say right before lunch. That kind of rationale, what do you think Mrs. Budget would think of that?
I believe I've tried to use this on Mrs. Budget from time to time, so I hope I am correct in saying that this one, indeed, she did call BS on. It's a double standard.
Now, she ranked this as the most acceptable of again, I will say they're relative to each other, so it's possible that the next ones are just this was the best of the worst by far. But she did say at least you were doing something positive in this scenario.
That is true.
So this was kind of both in ranking and in commentary. This was the one she felt most friendly towards.
Interesting. I clearly do not know my wife at all.
Well, you know my wife, because my wife ranked this as the most illogical one of the bunch, and she said it's ridiculous and should not be used for any type of rationalization.
I feel like it's kind of it's an amateurish rationalization. It's kind of it's a novice thing. Hey, I ate something healthy I can pig out, which I'm a big believer in and I use all the time. I just feel like it's not something that's easily excusable by an outside source.
Well, for me, what it is, it's an evolution of a justification I used to use, which was somewhat was legitimate. I think was that I worked out. I went to the gym, I went running, and therefore I can eat what I want. And I'll be honest, I don't really work out like I used to. So I've altered it to something I can and do, which is eat fruit or vegetables from time to time. And truth be told, I eat fruits and vegetables every single day. I just also eat, as you can tell, candy bars, cookies, and such. Okay, pay attention. This one's a little bit complicated.
Good. I've been missing the simple ones.
I was waiting at the hospital while a loved one was getting a fairly minor routine procedure. There was really nothing to worry about. In fact, I wasn't really worried. I mean, I was a little worried, but not really. It was very simple. I was there for about 2 hours by myself, and it wasn't mealtime, and I wasn't hungry at all. Nonetheless, in that time, I got 1, maybe even 2 bags of chips, a bag of Swedish fish, a soda, and I also think a candy bar in about a 2-hour period. I justified this as stress eating, but honestly, I was mostly just bored and seizing the opportunity. I did convince myself subconsciously that I was probably very worried, so eating whatever I wanted seemed to make sense. What did Mrs. Budget think? Did she buy this or did she not buy it?
This, to me, honestly, this sounds like the most logical. Because I mean, stress eating is a real thing, and it's something I'll do. And you probably were a bit stressed. I'm honestly using test-taking skills now. I'm going to say she called BS because I'm not going to deviate now.
You know what? Your strategy is going to pay off. She did call BS on this.
Finally.
Mrs. Budget ranked this one as pretty much unacceptable. Not the most unacceptable, but up there. And she actually more so she said, I found this one just kind of strange. So it seemed like there was a general sense of confusion on that one more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, you're mixing food with surgery and medical procedures with snacking. I could see where it would come off as a bit odd to the untrained snacker.
Mrs. Gallen actually was pretty forgiving on this one. She compared it to she is afraid of flying, and she copes with her stress flying by getting a snack that she enjoys. I mean, I did explain to her. I said, well, I don't think there was any actual stress. I think it was just a pretense. And she said, I understand, but kind of what you said. There's probably something. Is willing to accept the possibility that there's something deeper there, and if there's a time to indulge, that's it.
Now, is Mrs. Gallen's snack called Valium? Is that her snack of choice?
I put some inside her, fill Skittles full of Valium and just let her pop them in. Okay, one more. Pretty simple one. I'm at the movies. I'll always take the for 50 cents more upsell on sodas and popcorn. Not only that, but I will try to finish my soda and popcorn early in the movie, maybe even before the movie starts, and so I can get my free refill and to get my money's worth. Just because it makes economic sense.
Like I said, Mrs. Budget is a finance woman, and I think this is something I've even discussed with her. So I think she's going to be pretty open to this one. It makes economic sense. You're at the movies. It's a time for snacking. So I think she's pretty accepting of this. Okay, yeah. You ended on a very high note here. In fact, I think you really nailed her comments. She was generally very accepting of it. It was her second place as far as being acceptable. And she said, number one, she said, I'm guessing you don't go to the movies often, so this is more of a treat, which you said. She also said the frugal side of her likes getting the free refills, and that you also said. She also said this. She was very particular to say, and this is the only time she said it, this does not apply to Rod, in case he's wondering. So she seems to think it's acceptable for me, but she was very clear on saying perhaps this isn't the kind of justification that she would accept from you. Rod does not get a free refill. That's love in its truest sense right there.
Okay, and ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of Food Confessions Home Game Edition.
Hungry Dad. So finally tonight, I'm excited to announce that I'm going to be doing a live review. Hugh and myself have done one live review before, but tonight I'm going just on my own doing a live review. And that's because this really wasn't fully planned out. It's more of a spur-of-the-moment decision. Some background, I was at our local supermarket this evening for an innocuous non-Hungry Dads related errand, and I happened to be cutting down the chips aisle. You know, when you're trying to go from one end of the store to the checkout lane and you're looking for an aisle that has nobody in it. It's usually the dog food aisle or toiletries, but for some reason tonight, I think God was smiling down on me and it was the chips aisle. So I was able to cut down the chips aisle, and out of the corner of my eye, I spotted a combos flavor that I had not seen before. Hugh, I assume you're familiar with combos and combos snacks. Do you have any thoughts on combos?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of combos. I can't say they're a regular part of my life. They're the kind of thing that I would grab at an airport.
Wow, that's interesting. So as background, combos is my go-to road trip snack food, but more for me with driving, for whatever reason. I don't really have any logic or if there's some good reason behind it, but it's just kind of always been when we stop in for gas, maybe that's it, they're in gas stations everywhere you go. I'll pop in, I'll get a soda and some combos. And I've never really looked for them at the supermarket. I never really knew they were at the supermarket, but it makes sense that they are. But when I'm on a road trip and I go into a gas station, I never stray from my go-to flavor, which is pretzel and cheddar cheese, until tonight. So the new flavor that caught my eye tonight is 7-layer dip. I'm not sure if this is a new flavor or if I've just never noticed it before because maybe it's not in gas stations, but it's in supermarkets. But I was drawn to it because this tiny little cracker chip hybrid with a small filling claims to have a full 7 layers of dip flavor.
It's ambitious.
It's a big claim, which is why it was hard not to pierce the skin of this bag earlier tonight, but I can't wait to see if it does it. So I did admittedly have to do some 7-layer dip research. I'm familiar with it. I've been to parties with it, and I've eaten it, but I couldn't tell you what the 7 layers are supposed to be. So here they are, based on hardcore internet research. Beans, guacamole, sour cream, either salsa or tomatoes, cheddar or Monterey Jack cheese, black olives, and finally tortilla chips or a baked tortilla type layer at the ends. So that's the 7 layers. And as I started looking at the combos bag, which I have here in front of me, there's a nice cactus logo that says tangy fiesta flavor, which caught my eye. I don't know why a cactus. It's got prickly points on it.
Not exactly delicious.
It's portrayed on the bag. It's a prickly cactus. So that's a little scary, which I think drew me to it, honestly. And this is my favorite part. It says 7-layer dip with an asterisk next to the dip. So I'm like, okay, yeah, they're gonna, in this false print, it's gonna say there's not really 7 layers of flavor in this tiny little combo. There is 1 layer of combo. But that's not it at all. It says natural and artificial flavored filling. So, and then I looked at the back. I'm like, there has to say on here somewhere. So on the back, there's copy that says crunchy shells made with stone ground corn and a flavorful fiesta filling that will make you say, Olé. So nowhere on here does it say if there are actually 7 distinct layers in the combos. So I've been waiting on that. I'm gonna pierce the skin of the package now and see if there are indeed 7 layers in a combo somehow, or if it's just kind of a mash of flavoring.
Now, as you open it, so you've opened it. Now, look at one. Is there any visual indication of multiple layers?
Yeah, I couldn't imagine that would be the case. I've extracted a combo, and examining it under the light, there are definitely not 7 distinct colors. It's one color of a grayish. It's a grayish kind of refried bean color, so maybe that's going to be the predominant flavor. It's not what I'm used to because with my pretzel cheddar cheese, the cheese is colored a very bright orange, which gives some people pause, but the cheese tastes great to me. So there are not distinct flavor layers in here visually. But here I go. Who knows? Maybe it will be. It's zesty. Getting a lot of bean flavor. I'm going to try one more.
What's the zest? Because beans aren't zesty. You're getting a lot of bean flavor and a lot of zest. What identified the zest? Is it a cheese?
It's like a salsa slash. I'm going to say they did a hell of a job. Like,
really?
Yeah, this is. I'm going to try one more before
I'm watching. I'm watching you on Skype here when we do this, and your face reminded me of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I don't know if you remember the scene where the little girl tries the everlasting gobstopper, and first she says, "Tastes like roast beef." Now I'm getting mashed potatoes. Oh my gosh, and delicious apple pie. I felt like I watched you go through 7 layers of dip on your face just now.
I don't want to go too over the top, but there is a progression of flavors in here, which is pretty scary and amazing. There's not 7 flavors. There's a strong bean flavor, but it starts with a little bit of spice and goes predominantly bean, which sounds gross, but it's good. And then it finishes up with, I think I might even be getting a little bit of an olive flavor at the very end, which is weird but impressive. I'm not getting 7 flavors by any means, but it's It's an Olay of flavors.
You said it. You said it. I was waiting to see if you would say Olay, and you said it. The packaging has kept its promise.
Hungry Dads. Visit our website at hungrydads.com. Follow us on Twitter at hungry_dads. This has been a Hungry Dads production.
I certainly didn't expect Wasabi Ginger to... I certainly didn't...
There's our outtake.
There's our outtake.